Right, I think I'm ready. Are you guys ready? Cool. Let's rock and roll. Hey, it's time for another Beard Finn podcast episode, and thanks for joining me. Before I get into this week's episode, I would just like to touch on something which I haven't really touched on too much previously, and that is how do I fund the podcast? So I fund the podcast by selling apparel, and I do so under the brand Nerve Apparel. So I make all my Bearded Finn podcast supporter apparel that you guys are more than welcome to purchase if you would like to do so, as well as I do branded shirts for other businesses that I work with. So we supply t-shirts, long sleeve t-shirts, hoodies, as well as dry fit shirts. So if you'd like to support the podcast, please do so by buying a Bearded Finn podcast hoodie or t-shirt, or if you're a business that's looking for branded clothing, please reach out to us at Nerve Apparel. We'd appreciate that. Right. So on to this week's episode. In this week's episode, I chatted to Henk Kotzee. If you're an adventure motorcyclist here in South Africa, you will probably recognize him from the series Look What You're Missing, which was broadcast on Ignition TV some years ago. So Henk and I had an awesome conversation which spanned a couple of hours. We spoke about bikes, we spoke about training, we spoke about motorcycle tours, we spoke about the GS Trophy which he was involved in, as well as what it took to shoot the documentary Look What You're Missing. So, because of the length of the conversation, I've decided to split it into two parts. So this week will be part one, next week will be part two, and without wasting any more time, here is part one. I hope you enjoy. What do you do? Oh, I was going to say, did the power just go out?
That's my wife flicking switches here, sorting out
Yeah, I was
animals and putting animals away and stuff.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I was chatting to Thomas from Sabi.
Yeah. Sabi, yeah.
And his power went out while we were chatting, and his generator was working, but then he was using 3G, and then the tower in Sabi went down, and then we had to postpone until the next day. So
small town exercises. I can just imagine. I mean, even here sometimes it's just frustrating. Especially we obviously on what do you call it? Anyway, we used to be on like a dial-up, not a dial-up, but the normal telecom connection.
Oh, like ADSL or
ADSL, yeah, there's the word. Yeah. And geez, like it's just frustrating. After time it doesn't work, and then the speed drops when you need it. Obviously, at peak times it just goes to shit. So, yeah, at least that's slowly getting better. Yeah, it's better with new packages and stuff that's available now. It just helps.
Oh, you're on fiber. Are you on fiber?
That's the word I couldn't get to. Fiber, yeah. Before the fiber days, it was. Yeah, it's the normal. It's like also clicking 2 or 3 times to get the website open, and then I want to climb in with a hammer because it won't open. In the meantime, it's just the internet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it just be like a lottery when I came home from work, whether I was going to have ADSL or not. Yeah. I used to be so, and then spend 2 hours on the phone to Telkom. Yeah, thank God for fiber. Yeah. So Henk, whereabouts do you stay in Cape Town?
We in the northern suburbs. So it's called Uitzicht. It's sort of part of, depending on who you ask, part of Durbanville, that sort of area. Yeah. You've been at Cape Town, so you'll know where the Okavango and Okavango Drive and Cape Gate and all of that. It's sort of roughly down that direction.
Yeah, my sister lives down that area.
Okay. Yeah, we've been here for quite a while. I think we've been in this house now. We've had for 10 years, but we've moved around the general area a couple of times before we eventually sort of settled and bought the house.
Yeah. So I mean, have you always been in Cape Town, or?
No, I'm an Afrikaans boykie from Louis-Trichardt in the Northern Transvaal.
Okay.
Both my wife and I, she from an early age, I spent my whole life there. Schooling and all of that. My folks are still up there. Both our parents actually still live in Louis-Trichardt at the moment.
Okay.
So, I don't actually know how many years, but I've been in Cape Town for a good number of years. My wife studied at Stellenbosch, and I eventually tagged along or followed her down, and did all kinds of crazy things and settled. So
okay, awesome.
Yeah, I've been in Cape Town long enough to start calling people Walies and things.
Yeah.
Proudly so.
Yeah, proudly so. Well, I can. My only claim to fame is that I was born in Cape Town.
Wow,
and the rest of it is Transvaal, man, all the way.
It's so funny how that could be a thing, or it can be a thing.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
Yeah, so I'm hanging on to the fact that I was born in Cape Town, but that's all I can say. And that my folks live down there, so.
No, at least you like properly worked in. You've got family and everything.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So I mean, so if you grew up in the Northern Transvaal, so I mean, what were you like? You living in town, or were you living on a farm, or?
So a little bit of no. My parents actually, what's it now? 2 years or something like that. That they sold the property. I grew up on a small holding, small farm outside of the little town Lustrichard. And my parents, or my dad's family, had a farm close to Bannerleerskorp, just before Lustrichard, that small little town. So I was always between proper farm and our small holding. And like I said, I was born in Lustrichard. I grew up on the small holding, and I lived there my whole life before properly moving away to Cape Town. But yeah, it was always out of town. I'm the youngest of 4 kids, so I had the run of the place. I was probably younger as well. I'm 9 years younger than the last one, so
okay.
I literally had the run of the place, probably.
Awesome. So I mean, were you lucky enough to learn to ride on the small holding and mess around? Or?
Yeah. Not as early as I would have liked if I had my way. I just got lucky. My parents, it was always an issue, obviously, being that far out of town. We weren't massively far out of town, less than 10 Ks, but still, going to school and everything was always a story. Somebody had to be a school bus, which is how it started in the beginning. It's always school bus to school. And then the community, the kids just grew up, so there wasn't enough of us to justify paying for the school bus. And when that fell away, it was obviously mom and dad had to drive into town to drop you off. And then I was old enough, roughly at the same age, I was old enough to just ride a bicycle on my own. So I was, using a bicycle to school and back when it's not raining or something like that, or I can catch a lift with one of the folks. And then when I turned 15, my dad, I think it was a bit of convincing that I wasn't aware of, but he managed to get a ST 50cc Suzuki past my mom, which I couldn't ride on the road until I had the learners, but I did. So I rode it around the small holding, and up and down the road, and on our small farm quite a bit, just to learn to ride. A couple of spins on mates' bikes, but never really rode myself up to that point. But then, then obviously I started riding to school and back, and then to the farm eventually, and all over the show. So, my love, or the sickness that is motorcycling in my life, started with my dad. He was always had a bike, always rode bikes. I was never really part of his riding sort of career, if you can call it that, or his riding times.
Okay.
He had a not a massive accident, but he had a nasty accident when I was about a year old. On a XL 500 Honda. The bike, a bit of an incident with the bike, and the Kickstarter managed to go through his leg, so he had a massive accident. Yeah, it was nasty. So much so that he's all, as long as I've known him, he's had issues with his leg. He rode a bit, but never as much as he did before that accident.
All right.
The bikes was always there. There was a couple of trips or short sort of town trips, or around the province trips with my dad on the back of his bike. So it was always there. And then obviously when I was old enough to get my own, it just sort of started there, for me in terms of riding myself. But yeah, it's been, I suppose it's always been there.
Yeah. So I was that guy that that always wanted a bike, but my mom didn't want me to have a bike. I was always riding my mates' bikes, and I mean, like from MBX 50s to a friend of mine had two B120 Suzukis, and we made he made one bike out of it, and we used to cruise through the veld on this bike, and so I used to ride quite a bit, but my mom didn't really. Well, I suppose maybe she did know, because I did have an incident where I cut my foot open push starting the bike the one time. I had to go get stitches, so my mom had to take me. So obviously I had to explain how it happened. But I was never allowed to own my own bike. So I think
I got lucky. My mom is exactly the same. She's not necessarily anti-bike as such. Not a big fan of motorcycles. Never really loved riding with my dad or any of those sort of things. So for her, it was a practical solution or a practical thing more than anything. But I suppose she made peace with the fact that it's part of who he was, and obviously naturally became part of who I am. So she couldn't get away from it. Yeah. But I've had, especially now that my wife rides as well, I've had a couple of speeches.
There's a smart.
As you can imagine.
So this is the thing, is like whenever I meet a woman, the first thing I've got to check with her is that are you right with bikes?
Yep.
Well, do you ride yourself? Do you like going in pillion? And well, if you don't like riding bikes or anything like that, well, next please, kind of thing.
Yes, yeah.
Because I mean,
speed
I joke with people. I always say to them, hey, listen, if you want to ride bikes, you got to buy the bikes before you get married, because then they come as part of the package.
Yeah, things change.
Yeah,
things change afterwards.
I mean, in reality, it makes a lot of sense, or it's a lot better if your partner rides either on the back with you as a pillion or with you. I mean, preferably with their own bike, because it just makes life just so much more enjoyable. Because, I mean, you can enjoy those kind of things together.
No, I think, for me, I absolutely speak of, from experience with this. It was, obviously, it was a big sickness of part of my life for a very long time. My wife and I knew each other from school. So she sort of knew that it was, part of me. And it was one of those things that was always around. I didn't always have a bike, but it was always one of those things hanging around.
Yeah.
And then when I eventually got to a stage where I could buy the bike that I was dreaming about for so many years, she knew about this thing that's been in the back of my head, and every chance you get, you try and buy the bike, but then it doesn't work out or whatever. So she was part of that for a long time before I eventually bought the bike. And then also like the silly stuff that I did, but she really got chucked into the deep end. We had the bike for a couple of weeks, and at the time I basically had the bike, or it took me a couple of weeks to get my learner's license, because you do the learner's that expires and never do the license. That's me again.
Yep,
same thing. And then eventually I barely bought the bike, and I had this big massive plan riding through the country, so I had to do learner's license and license before December rocked around, where I had this big trip planned, and I eventually made peace with the fact that if I don't get the license, I at least have the learners. I'm going to go regardless. But I got lucky and I got both of them done, and then we proceeded to the first real. I mean, we did a couple of breakfast runs, you can call them. But the first real motorcycle sort of trip we did wasn't a weekend trip. It was just shy of 8,000 k's through the country.
Oh, nice.
So with her on the back of the bike, including most of Lesotho, a fair chunk of Swaziland, and a bunch of other crazy stuff. So, and that was Megan's first experience on a bike, really, a couple of riding a scooter into university and that sort of stuff, but never really anything more than that. So, I really threw her in the deep end. And I think she would tell you as well, by the time we got home after this massive ride or massive sort of trip, we thought massive at that time, she was like, okay, well, the only way this thing is going to fly is if I get my own bike and ride. This being on the back of the bike thing is not working. Because it was crazy. I did silly stuff. We had way too much luggage on the bike, had road tires on, we did Sani Pass, all kinds of crazy stuff like that. So we went.
It sounds like baptism of fire, actually.
100%, man. It was gung
like
ho,
a bonding
and it was
moment.
just gonna happen.
Yeah.
It was legendary. It was brilliant. It's still, one of the nicest things we've done. But because you're so green, you experience everything,
Yeah, and I think
it's fun.
Because I mean, when I bought my adventure bike, my GS, the first trip I did, I also was doing it on these like Tourance EXP tires, which were probably definitely not suited for dirt. First trip I'd done, I went over Rooiberg Mountain, and I was like, okay, this is so cool. But I mean, it's afterwards that you realize, holy shit, that was quite, I was on road tires. I was like heavily packed. I'd never done any training. It's the first time I'd ridden dirt with a big bike. Like I actually had sleepless nights afterwards going, oh shit.
Yeah, if you think about it, you did everything wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, also the thing is, you're just like, oh, well, I had such a good time, Yeah, I suppose in a way, if I had known then what I knew afterwards, I probably would have been more cautious and probably would have ended up hurting myself or something, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. 100%.
So
same story with us.
So what bike did you guys do their trip on?
It was also a GS 1200. Right. So 07. I still own it. It's got 1 million miles on it, and it's very, very tired. But it's a little bit grumpy at me at the moment because I'm standing in the rain for a while.
Oh shit!
But it starts and it runs and it does its thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, you were talking about the luggage and tires and stuff. It's exactly the same story. I had the Beamer panniers on the bike, a little bag on the back, and obviously my wife on the back. Road tires, I always joke and say the tumble dryer and the hair dryer and the dishwasher and everything was in the bike. We had no tools, no compressor, no puncture repair bugger all, none of that stuff.
Yes.
Through Lesotho, up Sani Pass. I lost brakes halfway up Sani Pass. Rode through the rest of the country with broken spotlights. Never fell, but the road was crazy. This is, a good couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So stuff just happened, and we just soldiered on and did our thing. It didn't change the momentum, and it was such a. And it was amazing. It was a bit crazy, but it was good.
Yeah, and I'm sure you still talk about that trip though. Oh, you disappeared there.
Here we go. Now you can hear me.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
I was just saying, I'm sure you guys still talk about that trip and reminisce about that trip.
Yeah. No, we do. It's also sad in a sense because we've done a couple of really nice rides. Also, maybe half that amount of miles, but we've done some, all the way up to Thomas and them, all the way up there to Nelspruit in that area. With Megan on our own bike, which is a whole different dynamic, and it's amazing. But if you're more experienced, there's a lot of stuff that kind of goes missing in a sense. It's also nice, it's not like I should go sit in a corner and complain that I've been riding for a while and my wife rides and it's all terrible. It's not like that at all. It's really amazing, but it's different.
Yeah,
you're not green and it's everything is fresh and new. It's like going into a new place or a new country or a new bike or whatever.
Yes.
It's just a little bit more exciting, than something that you've done a couple of times.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what that was for us. So it was just brilliant.
Yeah, and I mean
I'd
before
love
you did that,
to be able to do something similar to that again.
Yeah.
So I don't know on what though.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm sure you'll find something. So
there's a couple of plans.
Yeah, but before you did that long trip, did you do any sort of training before you did that, or were you?
So the whole story is it was actually for my 30th birthday. My wife bought me, because the dream at that point was about 10 or 12 years old. It started with a 1100 GS with a square light.
Yes.
My dad had a Beamer many years before I was born. My dad had a Beamer, and I don't actually know the model offhand, but anyway, so it was also one of those things. My dad had one, so I wanted one. And at that era, it was the 1100 GS, or the square light. So that's sort of where my GS thing started. And it was always alive, and then eventually 1150s came around, and then the 1150 Adventure came around, and I'm still in love with that bike. I'd love to have one of those. They're just spectacular things. And obviously the 1200 was launched, so it came and gone a couple of times. Me wanting this BMW bike, I tried to buy a couple of 650s that always something financially or business or something turned, and your bucky was more appropriate or whatever. So for my 30th birthday, my wife bought me a training voucher with a chap called Ronnie Desot. And she was studying with his daughter at university. And we became good friends because we were almost more friends with the mom and dad than we were with the kids, just purely because, the mutual love of motorcycles. And he did training. He still does some training from time to time in Cape Town. Anyway, so yeah, she bought me for my 30th birthday. She bought me this training voucher. And I didn't have a bike at the time. So eventually a couple of months later, when I got the time to go to the training, anyway, so he had a spare bike. He had a spare bike available. And he said, no worries, don't worry about the bike. I've got another bike. Pay me a couple of extra $100 and you can use the bike that I've got here. So I eventually went for the training. It was just an intro to adventure riding, the normal, like a country track style or BMW style intro course, day course. I did the course in the day, and at the end of the day, Ronnie said to me, look, we do a sand course the next day, which is obviously quite a lot more advanced and a little bit crazier, but you seemed happy, you seemed comfortable. If you're keen, then pay me for the course, but don't stress about the bike. You can just use the same bike. I won't charge you for the rental again. And obviously I was in it to win it, so I was there the next day. And I did the sand course and absolutely loved it. And the next Wednesday, that specific bike I did the course on was in my garage.
Oh, nice.
And that's the bike I still own.
Well done.
It built up so much by that time that it just had to happen.
Oh, well done. That's awesome.
It's a 07 1200 Adventure, and that was Ronnie's sort of own bike, but he was getting demo and sort of pre-owned bikes from one of the dealers at the time that he was using for training purposes. So anyway, I ended up buying his bike. But and then, like I said, it was, I think, 4.5, almost 5 weeks later, we were off on this big, massive ride through the country. Awesome. So just kind of straight after each other.
Yeah.
But it was in my head for so many years, it was bound to happen,
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's great. So, and your wife now, she's got her own bike. I mean, what bike is she riding?
So she started, actually, like I said, she had a little scooter in university. So she knew the basics, but she never really rode like a normal bike, clutch and all of that. So I taught her how to ride on the 1200.
Right.
Dropped it a couple of times, but anyway, those days it still mattered. Now it's different. And then we bought a little Dakar 2001 model Dakar.
Okay.
With no mileage on it. I think it's less than 20,000 Ks or something on the clock. Brilliant little bike, but as you can imagine, with that age and something that's been standing that long, it was always, then the seal is buggered, and then it's the forks, and then it's that, and there's always never anything major, but there's always these little things that you have to tinker with.
Yeah.
And we eventually did like a whole bunch of stuff and really fixed the bike up nicely, and then proceeded to sell it straight away. And she bought the last version of the Dakar, which is that BMW Citao, the 650 Citao.
Yeah.
So she rode that for a good while, and that was a new bike, and a lovely little bike. It's as good as the Dakar, it just looks different really. It's a brilliant little bike. And then I think it's a year and a half now, or 2 years, maybe 2 years ago, she upgraded to an 800. So we're still on the 800 at the moment.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, she's on a GS 800. Never been a fan of the bike personally, I must say. I'm not an 800 fan for a couple of reasons, but the bike it's got progressive springs and stuff on it, so it's actually been slightly pimped as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, because that's the first thing that I notice on those bikes are the front forks. First thing you need to replace.
You have to on that bike.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, she's happy with the choice on that bike, and it served as well. It's been a good bike, and with those tinkering little fork changes and that sort of stuff, turned into a really nice bike. And with the current age of mine, if I'm not on something new and borrowed, then I do ride that bike often as well.
Yeah.
Strangely.
Yeah. And I mean, how tall is your wife? I mean, because I found the 800 is quite a tall bike.
Yeah. So she's not that tall.
Okay.
Not nearly tall enough for that bike. She can pick one toe at a time.
Oh, right.
With normal shoes, it's a slight lean and a toe. With the bike boots on, a decent style of set of adventure boots, she can get like one proper dab down without having to lean the bike, which has been to me frustrating because she's hell of a confident. But you can imagine, it throws your confidence around a little bit as soon as the terrain gets exciting.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's some of the stuff that I've gotten her to ride that it's actually just crazy. But anyway, it happens. She would inevitably somewhere try and put a foot down, and then there's nothing, and then end up falling over.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, because of the bike, I think it made it maybe a little bit more frustrating than it needed to be. But it's 0.25% of the time that you spend riding that happens. The rest of the time, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, something like actually, to be honest, for her sort of experience level and type of riding she's done before, just a straightforward 1200 GS non-adventure would be the perfect bike for her. Nice and low, really controlled, and she loves the bike. She's ridden a whole bunch of them. Before she bought the 800, I had a new LC at the time that I was riding, and I went to Donford's BMW in Cape Town, and I fetched the 800, and we just rode around this sort of general Durbanville area, a bit of gravel, a bit of tar, and then swapped bikes and did the same sort of route in reverse. And by the time we got home, she said to me, no, yes, I agree, 1200, yes, easier, nicer, better, blah, blah, blah. But these two things that stick out is just still too intimidating for me, and ended up going with 800. So, I think if, by the time we get to buying another adventure bike for her, I'm sure it'll be 1200.
1200, yeah.
It's just a sensible bike. I've gotten a couple of ladies off whatever they were riding onto that bike. And if you don't want to go, orange and fly over things, then it's an amazing bike. It's just a steady, steam train.
Yeah, because I mean, when I was chatting to Thomas, we were just talking about, the fact that there are a lot more ladies riding, which is great, which is great, and all that kind of stuff. And he was just saying that. And his comment was that so many of them are actually riding 1200 GSs or 1250s.
Amen.
Yeah.
No, 100%.
Yeah. And he said some of them are riding those bikes better than some of the guys,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, it's like obvious people like Morag and those sort of girls that's been in the industry for a while. That I don't even look at them because that's what they do. But I mean, if I look at some of the girls that were riding with us just for social riding and stuff like that I eventually, actually 3 of them that I convinced to get off 700 is the one. The one was on a 650, I think, and the other one was on a F800 Adventure. And all 3 of them I managed to convince and get them onto the GS Trophy 1200 Trophy model. Because money-wise, compared to the bike they weren't that far off because of the lowered sort of spec bike.
Yeah.
But my word, it was not one of them were like intimidated or thought it was a dumb idea or anything like that. Their riding only improved because of that bike. Again, if you're going to go doing crazy off-road single track stuff, then sure, then maybe it's a different conversation. But for the average type of adventure riding that the average girl ends up doing, you can't ask for better, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
They really just do the trick,
Yeah. Well, I'm so biased, it's not funny. Because
I'm like, with you, man.
So my sort of like first bike that I owned is I picked up a 1978 R80 stroke 7 from a mate of mine. And this was my this is my bike. And I mean, I've been standing like for 10 years. And anyway, I got this thing going, and I needed to buy myself some apparel. Went onto Gumtree, and I found there was this guy that was selling one of these Airflow jackets. And I was, okay, so I bought it off him. And when I went round to his place, he's a lawyer here in Northcliffe, and he had like 6 bikes in his garage. It's like 2 Harleys, and he had a HP2 Moto Red or whatever it was, and he had a Street Triple so he had that Rocket 3 Triumph, but then he had a GS at the end. And I said, oh, geez, man, these are beautiful bikes. And I'm like, how do you decide which one to ride? And he says, no, he just commutes on them, and he swaps them out every week and everything. But he says, no, actually, because they're all new bikes. And I said to him, but he said, no, he actually even rotates the bikes every 18 months. He'll sell them, and then he'll buy another bike, and he'll try this model, he'll try that model. But he says there's one bike he'll never get rid of, and that's the GS. I said, okay. So he said, no, once you've ridden a GS, you'll always have a GS, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I suppose that is a bit of an exaggeration, but once I went and test rode a 1200 GS, the air-cooled one.
Yeah.
Before the LC came out, it's like, I got to have this bike. And pretty much like you were saying, like within a week, within about 2 weeks, I had the bike. So,
it happens.
Yeah, it happens. Yeah. So, now I love the GS. Now I love the 1200 GS. I'm like, I ride the other bikes. I mean, I've got other bikes, and I'll ride those, and I enjoy those. But I mean, for me, the what I like about the 1200 GS, that style of bike, I'm just biased towards the BMWs.
Sure, with the adventure style bike.
Yeah. So, you can climb on the bike. It's versatile. You can ride it in town. You can go out on a Sunday ride, breakfast run. You can tour on it. You can do a long trip on the tar.
Yep.
Hey, and then you see a dirt road. You can take the dirt road. That's the kind of, that's what I like about the versatility of the bike. And I suppose the 1200 GS is not the only model that you can do that on, but I'm just biased. So.
No, the thing is, I agree 100% with you. And I say this a lot of the time to people. I said, if you have to go for the best in every segment, then the GS would never gets there. It's not the best at anything.
Yeah.
It's not the best sports bike. It's not the best adventure bike. It's not the best off-road bike. But it sure as shit's second or third. And you can't say that for all of the other bikes.
Yeah.
They're lacking, massively in some segment.
Yeah.
And I think if you can only have one, it's a no-brainer. If you get multiple bikes, then sure, then the book is open for you.
Yeah, sure.
Then you can say, okay, well, I'm buying it because it's a great tourer, but I'm not using it off-road or whatever. Sure, that works for some people. But for me, it's always been you can't afford 20 bikes. And if you've got, like I said, my wife rides, I ride, so there's already 2 bikes. It financially just becomes impossible.
Yeah, true.
So,
true,
and if I, as long as I can't have one of each, then it just makes sense.
Have one
that can have the most versatile one.
Yeah, exactly,
that you can do anything with.
Yeah.
It's also changed, I must say. Now that I'm in the position where I really honestly need to look at a newer bike. I've been very spoiled. I've always, the last couple of years, I've had access to all kinds of bikes, new bikes and demo bikes and media bikes and all this sort of stuff, which has been just a little blessing in the background. So I haven't really been pushed to having to upgrade, but I have to now. With the training and stuff as well, I don't have much of a choice but to have one decent bike that is there for whenever you're not being spoiled. And herein comes the question: is what is the next bike? It's always been a simple question or a simple answer. It's always been the GS. And now I'm thinking just lifestyle. There's so many other things that I spend doing that maybe it's worth thinking of buying something like a 701, 690, something in that sort of segment. Because it also opens up a segment that I haven't been able to do for a long time that I also love, sort of enduro riding and stuff. But gosh, man, it's such a difficult decision. I've got the GS sickness bad, and I just love that style bike. You know, it's a you can sit there all day and you don't feel like you're dying at the end of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is kind of what I live for. So yeah, it's not an easy question. I've been asking it for a while, but my answer hasn't changed, to be honest.
Yeah, well, I'm sure. Yeah, it's like you say, it's difficult. It really depends what you want to do with the bike. Like you say, if you want to do some of the enduro stuff, then you know, like you need to have a lighter bike.
100%. Yeah.
Because I mean, we can't all be Chris Birch and ride a 1290 like an enduro bike, you know.
Exactly.
We'd love to. It's a good advert for the bike. It's a good advert for the bike.
I've dragged that damn 1200 out of things before, and that you shouldn't be there. You literally, like, you know, it's not fair to you or the people that ride with you or the poor bike that you're breaking.
Yes.
But, you know, it happens. You end up in places where you shouldn't be. And it's a hell of a lot of fun. But, you know, if you're on a I don't know, 690 type of thing, then, you know, those places are just easier to get out. Yeah. But then also in the same breath, I've done, you know, weekend rides and things that some, you know, Oak joins us with a 701 or a 690 or a, even like 700 Beamers, or there was one chap on a NC 750, and they all enjoy the weekend. They have a ton of fun. We've had Buells and Harley Davidsons with us on off-road rides.
Oh, wow.
They have a massively exciting, awesome ride. But then there's little patches where that I envy the guy on the 690 flying through hoops and things like it's an off-road bike, and I'm sort of lagging because I'm on a big old beast. But you know what? At the end of the day, I get there and I jump off, and we can, you know, cook and socialize and do what we have to do. And the Oak is walking all like bent and broken. Yeah. Spending a long, tough day on a bike, and for me, it was just another ride, and it's purely based on how comfortable the damn bike is.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you know, it takes one weekend like that to put you straight back into the GS box.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I must admit, I mean, you know, probably not riding as much dirt as I would want to be, and then you know, when I get onto dirt now, it takes about 20 minutes, maybe 45 minutes for me to get back into the groove, and but then once you're in the groove, I mean, I just love the bike, because the bike is just, you know, once you got your confidence back, then the bike is just doing, you know, exactly what you want it to do, and you're just having so much fun, you know.
It's the thing with these new things. I'm absolutely in love with the 1250 HB edition. It's such a phenomenal bike. It's just mind blowing how good that thing is, because, you know, it's been. I've ridden 1150s, and obviously the LC, the air cools, I've sort of gone through the 1200 air cool at least. I've had a couple of different models that I've spent quite a bit of time on. And same with the LCs, I've ridden all of them for, like, you know, a good amount of Ks. And the very first time I got to ride the 1250, I was on the Beamer launch when they were launching those 1250s. I got, again, I sort of just got lucky because I had the HB Adventure for the one day, and then the HB normal GS. HB Spec though, but the normal GS, not the Adventure, for the second day. So I was on the right model very much for the whole launch. And then already it was just, this bike is phenomenal. It's just something, there's a couple of things there that's always been the LCs, this is annoying me, or on the air cooled, you know, it'd be nice if it had that. And this bike has just got a nice package of everything, except the little price tag thing that's constantly a problem. It's a little bit heavy on the one side here, but as a machine, it's a phenomenal bike. And I've had them for a couple of weekend rides, and I did it was advertised and booked as an intermediate training course, and then when the group came there, it's all guys that I knew or knew of, and they were all guys that's done other rides with me, and I kind of know their skill level, so we pushed the envelope a bit that weekend. And I was on this HB, and it was just, I mean, some of the stuff we did was like I would say at least an advanced training course level, but it was beyond sort of stupid every now and then as well.
Yeah.
And that bike was just on par, like performing like a beast all the time. Yeah. There's a little, on this farm that we do this training on, there's a really hectic little off-road section. And as you can imagine, you know, with with Africa Twins and 1290s and a nice mix of 800GS is like a bunch of bikes, even a 701 actually. And I wasn't struggling at any stage riding that bike with my mate on the 701. We were riding together a lot of the time, and you can't compare those bikes in any way, shape, or form, especially in really tough terrain. But that thing is phenomenal to such a point where we, I wasn't struggling to keep up with him when he was pushing his luck a little bit and flying over really rough off-road steps and hectic climbs and things. The bike would just smile and take it. So yeah, if it wasn't for that price tag situation, I would love to put one of those in my garage. They're just amazing things.
Yeah, I'm actually too scared to go ride it because then.
Oh, you must do it. That is you sort of spoiled for it, afterwards, but it's worth doing it.
Yeah,
it's good enough to just try.
Yeah, I think I must. Now that the lockdown's easing up, I think I need to go. But now you were saying that you got a voucher from your wife to go for some bike training. Yeah. Now you are doing adventure bike training. How did you get there?
So, man, it's such a long. It feels like a long story, and if I look at the amount of years, it's starting to feel like it's a lot of time, but it really wasn't. It's stuff that happened fairly fast. It's only been basically 10 years now that I've been properly in it and not just sort of riding whatever I can whenever I can.
Yeah.
So we bought the bike. We did this crazy trip. Ronnie that I did the training with, he was quite involved with the BMW club here in Cape Town, and recommended that if we want to just do more, rides and socialize and just figure out where to go, that's a good place to start. So we eventually joined the club meeting and made a couple of mates and did a couple of rides, and then we were at that point in the BMW club we were a nice sort of big group of friends, and we did all the off-road rides. We did all the camping trips, and at some stage we were doing 2 to 3 weekends a month. We were on the bikes, and all of those were off-road stuff. We never did any of the real sort of tar rides or longer trips. So it's just like weekends or 2 nights at worst. Yeah. And then Megan and myself, we would still go and do longer trips wherever we can, maybe once a year, try and fit in something a little bit like a week or 2 week ride. But we're doing all these weekend rides constantly. And then in 2013, the club got the opportunity to get those days. It was called Motorrad Days or BMW Days or something like that. Yeah. And it was at Goodini Spa. So the club was hosting the event, and myself, the then chairman, and a friend of ours decided that it might be a cool idea. They were actually the two guys that's more involved in that part of it. They said it'll be such a cool idea to try and film this event, this BMW event.
Okay.
And which they then did. I was involved with all the filming and everything, but I also at the same time had a trip to Lesotho booked over the same weekend. That all over it was 12 days, but it was slap bang in the middle of this actual BMW event. So I was involved in all the B-roll stuff, all the filming and all the production and stuff behind in the build up to it, but I never went to the actual event. So, and it was just a cool thing. This mate of ours, Trevor Farsveld, owns a production company. They do TV ads and that sort of stuff, voiceovers and TV ads and all these things. So it was a natural. He's just one of the mates. If you've got a doctor, you go for an exam every now and then. Yeah. It's almost one of those scenarios, And it was quite a cool thing. And then when that was done, we were just talking about it and saying it's such a nice thing to do. Maybe what else can you do with it, or what value as a motorcycle or a travel show or something like that have. And Warren, the other chap that was involved, then basically had a conversation with Trevor, and Trevor said, look, if you want to do something like this, try and write a script. We film one and we see how it goes and what it feels like. But obviously these are none of us had a clue, not our industry, not our day jobs. We no idea how do you start or what it's all about.
Yeah.
And Trevor actually said the best way to describe it, or the best way he thinks you should put something like this together, is to do like a ride report. Just write a ride report like you think it would be, and then we go and do it. Then we go off and we go and do this ride report in reverse, basically. Instead of having a really nice weekend and then writing about it, you basically reverse it. And then that started the whole TV series in a sense, or that was the beginning days of it. There was a million things that happened, as you can imagine, just to get the first episode done.
Sure.
I was there and I was part of the filming from day one, but Warren was the only one on camera, like the talking head part of it. He was the only one doing it, but we were, running around with boards and doing the riding shots and moving cameras and all that sort of stuff behind the scenes. And like the demo tape, if I can call it that, was a big old long, I think a 45-minute, story.
Yeah, sure.
And then now you've got this thing. What do you do with it? So it got sent out to all over the show, to production companies, to network companies, to Motorrad Germany, and it just went all over the show and try and get some feedback, which you don't really get. Hell of a frustrating. The guys don't, it's just chucked into file 13 and left there. But anyway, we sort of carried on and refined and did this first episode with Warren only a couple of different times. And then eventually Warren and Trevor sort of felt that it's very difficult to just be one guy doing the talking head side. There's no sort of personality. There's just no, it's very sort of flat and bland. There's no feeling to it, which then is they eventually decided that I need to try this whole talking head thing and being on camera out with Warren, and then the episode was split into basically two halves. The script was split in two, so we have two personalities now on TV, and we sort of give each other shit every now and then a little bit, and it was just someone and something to play off with.
Yeah.
But anyway, so long story short, that was really me taking this weekend adventure thing a little bit more seriously and thinking that, yes, you know what, that whole dream of doing something in the industry or making motorcycles a day job more than just this thing you do from hopefully Friday afternoons to Sundays, and maybe a week every year, to try and get into the industry a bit more.
Okay.
And then, I've got some crazy opportunities. I was doing one of the Continental motorcycle tire importers. I was the manager, sales manager, national sales manager for a year. And in between all the TV series and just doing a lot of social rides, and we did a lot of social rides as a spin-off because of the TV series, and a couple of tours, like, multi-day trips. And you would always be in a situation where there's somebody riding with you, or somebody's wife wants to ride or something like that, and the guys are looking for training or they're looking for a bit of help. And it was just one of those random things that sort of just actually happened. You say, oh yeah, no worries, bring your wife, we'll spend an afternoon with her, and then bring your four mates and we'll take a day and have some fun, and no problem, join us for the weekend and we'll spend the Saturday afternoon in the sandpit and we'll work on getting you guys a bit more comfortable. And it sort of slowly grew out from that. And then what sort of really gave it or put it into second gear is I was at a Charlie Boorman event, funny enough, with Billy Ward got me involved with a Charlie Boorman event here in Cape Town. And that night I had a tire display there for the business I had at the time, the Tire Fitness Center. And I had a chat with the chairman for Killarney, the racetrack, out in sort of Blouberg direction.
Yeah.
The chairman was there, and he had a chat with me, and they had this piece of property in the back end of Killarney that used to be a MX track back in the day, and it's basically just sort of grown over and gone to rubbish, and it's just lying there. It's property they're not using, and they were just looking for something to do with it, and he wanted to know if I wouldn't be interested in somehow getting involved or considering adventure bike training or something, which then also took about a year for me to get my head around what to do with it. But that really gave us like a bit of, like I said, put it into second gear, and we thought, okay, well, there's a piece of ideal property to do training, but it was a long sort of path to get to the training part. We did like an adventure open bike event, just a couple of stalls, guys riding the track we built, and it sort of grew from that. But then the whole idea ultimately was just to do training as a spin-off. So now the guys saw the track, they knew that it's out there, they saw the name that we were using, and it just gave it a little bit of exposure, and then we started doing like, a bit more professional training, if I can call it that.
Yeah.
Not just slapping it together once every now and then. And that's a bit of a long-winded version of it, but that's really how it started. It really was just a case of people wanting to do a bit of asking questions and wanting to learn, and spending time with us, and we're seeing like, gosh, a little bit of input and a little bit of advice goes a long way, to doing a couple of small training courses with small groups, and it's grown slowly, steadily from there. And now it's sort of when I'm in South Africa, ex-COVID situations. Yeah. But when I'm here, I do the training basically full time. That was at least the plan for this year. The time I would have spent in South Africa would have been training like events, and then hopefully, anyway, I'll spend my time on that, and then I do tour guiding for the second half of the year, which is now. Not happening.
Also not happening.
Thank you to COVID. Yeah.
Yeah, geez, it must be it must be very frustrating. I mean, you got all these plans, you're excited about them, and then you have this like speed.
Yeah, 2020 is special. My wife was just before the call. My wife was sitting there looking through all these Facebook sort of meme type things and reading some to me, like all the. Like an Avo with a big massive pip and a tiny green liner, and this is the 2020 Avo and all these sort of things. But it's really it's very appropriate. It's
I suppose one's got to try and see the funny side to it. But we understand the seriousness of it. Yeah. And the effect that it has on businesses like touring and.
Yeah, it's scary.
Whatever. I mean, there's just.
Have to just carry on.
Yeah. So. Well, let's go back to the TV series quickly. Right. So, I mean, that just happened. So, I mean, was it always an idea to create it as a series, or was it just like something that just happened? You try and do a film, and then someone says, "Hey, well, why don't we try and see?" If
it was something that grew from a whole bunch of beers with a small group of people.
Yeah.
We were just really just three friends with 4 or 5. 6 people that we were always riding together, but the 3 of us were the guys that was kind of always involved with the ride. Or Warren was the chairman of the club, so he was the organizer of the ride, and we were the tag-alongs that did all these rides. And there's lots of talking nonsense over beers around campfires. Everybody, all 3 of us, have got a different version of how the first conversation started, but I think it was multiple conversations. It wasn't really one, but the one that I remember, the reason I remember it because it's just different to what we normally did. It was in winter, and there was quite a lot of sort of rainfall predicted for the specific weekend, and the BMW Club Fair, where the riders that we were at the time decided we're going to go with the vehicles into the Tankwa and do a recce of a ride we were doing the weekend after this.
Okay.
And there was one little stretch of road that Warren wasn't sure about, and he hasn't been there for many years, so he wanted to go and check it out. So we were in 3 vehicles driving through the Tankwa with 2-way radios. And I remember we were talking about this whole TV series and travel program, and we're going to do this thing. And I remember Warren saying, this is perfect. We've got somebody that can talk a lot of shit, meaning Warren. We've got somebody that knows how cameras works, meaning Trevor. And then he said, we've got somebody that can kind of ride a bike, which is me. And that was this random conversation on 2-way radios in vehicles, which was completely, awkward. It wasn't the sort of thing we ever did. But to me, that was like, one of the weekends that stand out as that was a bit of a decision of actually going ahead and trying something, which was then the spin-off of the Motorrad Days event thing in Godini, and then it slowly just grew from that.
Yeah.
So I think It's such a roller coaster, man. Obviously, Afrikaans boykie from Limpopo just being on camera and in a different language already was far from anything I ever imagined doing. But besides all of that, we did the demo tape a couple of times. We eventually did myself and Warren on it, and we had like episode one that we thought was sort of roughly the format that we felt was good.
Yeah.
And then we proceeded to try and promote this and market it, and we went to crazy lengths to try and do this. And we got a lot of motivation and momentum from Motorrad Germany, actually. So at one stage we were retiring and riding sponsored bikes with sponsored suits and flying around in private jets to sorry we no money and we're not supporting you at all. So it was just like up and down all the time.
Yeah, that must be frustrating. Yeah,
it's crazy. It's such an emotional roller coaster, lack of a better way of putting it. But we had a platform that was keen on our program. We had a series virtually finished, like the first 6 episodes were just about in the bag. There was like fine bit of on set stuff that we had to go and film and fix, and tons of editing. But basically, we were right about done. We had a commitment from Motorrad Germany for a nice big fat check. We would have given us a little bit of budget, like 4 or 5%, let's call it 10% of filming budget, but also it would have given us the money to get it on TV, because we knew you had to pay to get it on TV,
sure,
which we obviously did in the beginning. So that was we were right there. We thought, okay, this is amazing. These guys are we were literally waiting for payment. And then it's the one-liner that came through. Sorry, we overstretched with the budget this year. We won't be able to meet our commitment. So sorry, there's no money coming through. And we were literally sitting there waiting for a payment, and then the email came through instead of a payment. So, and then you start over. And everything is rubbish, and everybody hates you, and it's all terrible. But what was quite interesting is one of the signatures on the email. From the marketing team, Motorrad Germany, was Alexander Baraka. He was in Germany, and he was just part of that marketing team that got copied in the whole thing. And that was about 2 weeks after the announcement of Alexander Baraka that's taking over Motorrad South Africa. So the name just rang a bell along the line. Warren actually spotted the name and thought, oh gosh, I've seen this name somewhere, went looking for it, and then realized, oh gosh, this is the guy we've been speaking to, or one of the guys that's been in contact with us from Germany. So a couple of emails and phone calls, actually a whole bunch of random emails hoping that it sticks, just with Alexander, in different nominations sent out to Motorrad South Africa, just hoping something hits the board, which one did. Got an email back, and 2 days later, Trevor was having lunch with him in the waterfront, and they had a proper conversation. He committed to giving us the broadcast fee, the broadcast money. So, and that got us on Ignition. The Ignition part of it, or the reason we got to Ignition was as long-winded, irritating story, but they were keen on having us, but not so keen on not getting paid for it. And that was a lot of negotiation before we got to the amount that we eventually paid to get the thing broadcast. And then, it was all these little things that sort of, a lot of them were just, gelukkies, just little accidents that happened, and we got lucky. There was a ton of working and a ton of, spending money none of us had at the time for riding bikes and putting tires on and fixing things and, paying for accommodation and food and all these things. But we all just went, gung-ho into it and kept going until we got this broadcast money out of the blue, and we thought, okay, gosh, this is the one, this is going to do it. And the thing was broadcast. There was a lot of really good, figures and numbers and things coming back from Ignition, all stuff that looked really good and we thought was amazing. And the feedback, like on Facebook and social media, sort of stuff that was coming from the audience was really good. So all of that gave us a lot of momentum to do the second season. And again, there was a nice big fat check in the mail from BMW. It's on its way. And then obviously, that's brilliant. So now we had all this momentum to get season 2 on the run, which we did. Got the thing filmed and got it all done. The check then sort of, progressively got less as time went on to get to broadcast dates. But we got very lucky with the second season. Ignition contacted us a couple of months before the second season was ready to actually go. They contacted us and said, look, can we rebroadcast your first season? And we were, yeah, for sure, no problem. But you guys are supposed to pay us now for it. You're supposed to pay us for that content because you want it. We're not begging you. You want it now. But don't stress about it. You give us a good rate, close to free for the second season, and then you go ahead and broadcast the first season as a rerun. And by the time the rerun is done, our second season would be ready, and then obviously we pay you a bit less. And they signed up for it. They were keen on the idea.
Cool.
So we got the second season broadcast at a crazy, it's just everything was just easier. It was a better rate, and it was way better for us. We got a decent in our budget, but a tiny percent of the realistic budget. We got a bit of money from BMW eventually. So it gave us broadcast fees plus a little bit of accommodation fees and stuff along the way, which was really nice. It was nice to actually get something. It just felt like there was something happening. But I think the wind got taken out of the sails in a sense. I started moving on, doing more training stuff, and I wanted to do a lot more social rides and also like commercial rides. I wanted to do bigger tours and things. Trevor and the guys were doing a lot of just ride to the mates, like way back when we started. And sort of between all of that, we were trying to market this thing to a different and a bigger and an international or any other platform for that matter. To try and get it on a different channel or, maybe an international channel or something. And it all ultimately is just a budget thing. You've got the content. I think the content, especially season 1 to me is debatable. Season 2 I feel good about. I think it's a good quality product. At least definitely looking at how we did it and like the way we put it together, it turned out really, really nice. But you need somebody that's got the budget to go to international trade shows and physically put up a stall and market the content to other platforms, to Discoveries and these sort of places, which none of us, it was never any of us sort of day jobs or industry or anything like that. So we lost a lot of, I think, motivation, really, I suppose is the best way to put it, to do those sort of things. There wasn't a budget for it. We didn't have, a couple of $100K in the bank to draw off to go to Germany for a trade field, to go to the UK or any of those sort of things. Anyway, like I said, so the training then became, I was involved with the tire business, Continental at the time, and that became eventually my own business. And the focus just got, sort of dragged off the TV program. I'd love to do more of it. I'd love to get back and do a season 3 or do something different or be involved in that industry. It's a lot of fun, especially when the camera's not on you or when the pressure is not on you and the cameras are still rolling. There's a lot of stuff that happens, and it's a level of fun. So it's a ton of fun. It's just a cool thing to do. But who knows what the future holds as far as that stuff goes. Yeah, it's such a crazy industry, man. Like everything you think plus 100% other stuff.
I'm
it's
sure.
Just,
yeah. Look, like you were saying that you have to pay to get it onto Ignition TV. I would never have thought I would have thought it would be the other way around, that they would be paying you to have your shit on their channel.
But, if you think about it, if you're the couple of guys in Cape Town, South Africa, then you pay. If you're Jeremy Clarkson from Top Gear now, not Jeremy Clarkson 25 years ago from Top Gear, they pay you. Yeah. So it's all about, it's like the Facebook marketing or Instagram marketing or any of these things. It's all ratings, YouTube, all these things. It's just all ratings and figures and stuff behind the scenes. And when you get to a certain point, you can monetize it. But before that point, it's just another thing. It's just it's just stuff out there.
Yeah.
We also didn't know.
Yeah, well, it's you learned. But now, when you were filming it, how long would it take you to film an episode? I mean, is it a weekend?
Gosh.
Is it over a couple of weekends? Like,
yeah, it's so.
I mean, do you like say, okay, we need this shot. Okay, you go right down the road, and you ride back again, and I'll get it. Okay, but now I need you from this angle. You go back again and come back again.
Yes.
Is that basically
pretty much? That's pretty much what it is. That's not like a commercial TV budget or budgeted TV show doesn't work like that. You know, everybody's on set and everything gets done that day that you need to have done that day. And maybe tomorrow you go back to quickly touch up something that somebody forgot to push record on.
Yes.
Or the sound wasn't great or something. But that wasn't our story at all. We all had. I had a business at the time. I had a completely unrelated packaging business. Warren had a day job. Trevor had a business to run. So we had, if we're lucky, Friday afternoons. Most of the time it was Saturdays and Sundays. We would chase out into Cedarburg, Tankwa, Overberg, whatever the episode was. Film everything we can. The Friday afternoon, film Sunday morning. You know, chase back into Cape Town, and then Monday morning's day job.
Yeah.
And we did this. I don't know if any one of us have like any form of realistic count of how many times we went to the Cedarburg to do the first episode. We did multiple weekends, like, you know, tens of weekends to do the first demo tape with Warren. And then we did all of that again and again and again over with the two of us. And even when just before broadcast started, Trevor is a bit of a perfectionist, so there was stuff he wasn't happy with. So now we've had, you know, hundreds of weekends of practicing and stuff. So now that one that we did in the beginning is just not good enough for him. So we went back and did, you know, the first episode a couple more times to fix things. There's also not the, you know, I'm very not a skeptic. I'm very sort of cautious of saying stuff like this because people perceive it different to what it is. But there's a farm in a Bidder Valley that I haven't been there for a long time, but we've always been good friends with the owners. It's literally as you drive into the Bidder Valley, the bottom end of the Cedarburg. Farm is called Mertenhof. It's actually one of the farms in our episode about that area. And we were staying at this farm, and about 1.5 kilometers up the road, we were doing some on-camera shots. And Warren thought it's a clever idea to butter up the tongues, to put a bottle of Baines whiskey in the top box. So we were out there basically in this farm's driveway trying to do some on-camera stuff that we in the beginning of this one specific weekend. And we were just like I was really new to it, so I was very nervous, and it's really difficult to get your lines in. And it was just a battle. So we would try and do some lines, and it was like a whole section of the one episode that we were there doing these lines, setting up the next week's episode or something. And we would go over it, and then we'd like argue and walk to the top box, and there's this whole, you know, flying hands and things in the air and going through the script kind of stuff, and then swinging the bottle and putting it back in the top box. And then so we really quickly realized that besides the drinking and riding thing that's inevitably is going to end up in a big disaster, is there's this tiny little window of maybe 10-15 minutes of perfection, like, you know, the really good stuff, like Brad Pitt sort of stuff, and then it goes to shit like straight after that, and it really goes downhill very, very fast. So there's lots of this sort of stuff, you know. That's the fun stuff. But the amount of time is just crazy, man. I remember one weekend, same guy, actually, Ronnie, that I bought my bike from. He was going up to Willamore.
Yes.
And weekend, and I decided on a Thursday I'm going to join him for this ride to Willamore. So we rode up the Thursday to Prince Albert. We stayed in Prince Albert that night, and then the next day, the Friday, I rode up to Willamore with him. And then when we got to Willamore, I had a coffee or something, and then I flew back to Cape Town. So I rode all the way back to Cape Town, and I basically got back to Cape Town, parked my bike, Warren, and then was outside with a camera van, and I jumped in the van and we went off filming. It was one of the beginning episodes, or the first episodes filming weekend. So there was lots of the sort of stuff that you do off when you just pressure at work and trying to get some orders done, and then literally Friday afternoon, you know, at 10, 11 o'clock or whatever, you roll into home and jump in bed, and then 6, 7 o'clock the next morning you're up on the bike and we're going to go filming. And it just kept going and just literally never stopped. It was just every weekend we were out there filming.
Yeah.
And this went on for the as long as we were filming the 2 seasons. It literally that was the recipe. We were just at it pretty much all the time.
Yeah.
And there was a whole bunch of them. It's just one of those weird things that happened, and I always remember it when you talk about the filming days, is that one weekend, sort of out of 2 or 3 months, sometimes you end up like one Saturday at home. We decided this weekend it's, the weather's not great, or we just need to learn scripts or whatever it is, or there's something else going on that we're not going to go filming. Like clockwork, that bloody weekend was the end of the month. And then obviously you haven't been at home for so many weekends, so you had to quickly run into the local shop and do a couple of necessities. And I guarantee you, 100% of the time, it was the end of the month. And I obviously love standing in queues in shops and things. Yes. So it was, I would get into such a huff. We'd get home after a Saturday quickly, Saturday morning, running around the shops. You get home at 1 o'clock, and I'd sit on the couch in the house, bitching and moaning. How we never go anywhere. We never do anything. We just end up in these stupid queues in these stupid shops, and I would literally sit and sulk there for like 3 or 4 hours until I realized what the hell are you talking about. So it's just silly stuff like that, always comes back.
Yeah, it sounds hectic. Yeah, because it always looks, like when you see the finished product, you're going, oh man, that's so cool. I'd love to be able to do that, but try and do it yourself. Try and put a video together. I've got hours and hours of GoPro video I've never edited. Half of it is just tar in a straight line kind of stuff, you know what it's like.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I do appreciate the time and time that it takes to do that stuff. So are those episodes still available somewhere, or is it like?
Yeah. So it's been on available for free on the YouTube channel. Look what you're missing YouTube channel. Yeah. There's it's a TV to Africa, I think. It's Africa to TV, TV to Africa, something like that. It's a Netflix wannabe.
Okay.
Maybe not the right way to say it, but you know what I mean. It's like it's a small
streaming
platform, streaming service. Thank you. Save it right there, Ben. And they marketing content into Africa, Botswana, Namibia, those sort of things. So it's available on that platform as well. But obviously it's for free on YouTube, and it's freely available there.
Awesome.
So it's been out there since sort of broadcast and everything stopped, and we weren't actively trying to get it onto the next platform anymore. It was opened up for everyone to view.
Yeah.
So it is still out there.
Okay. Cool. That's good. Right. There you have part 1 of my conversation with Henk Kotzee. Thanks for listening this far. If you made it this far, if you are enjoying the podcast, please go and rate and review the podcast on Apple Podcast. Follow us on Spotify. And if you would like to reach out and have a conversation, please do so via Facebook and Instagram. If you're listening to this episode or any of the other episodes on your favorite podcasting app, but you would like to watch the video version of this, please go to YouTube, search The Bearded Fen, and you'll find all the latest episodes in video format. And that, my friends, is the end. I'll catch you next time.